welcome to the Webcast for Monday, August 3rd. I'm South Ops meteorologist Jonathan O'Brien. We're starting the week off with plenty of sunshine as strong high pressure remains in control of our weather. But with a little bit more onshore flow, we do have a little more marine layer cloudiness this morning. Those clouds will burn off pretty quickly, but the ocean influence will keep some decent heat relief going in the coastal areas today. Here's a look at some maximum humidity values since midnight last night. We have had a very dry air mass in place this past weekend, and it's been keeping the RHs much lower than we've seen for most of this summer. Many areas, especially across the interior and the foothills and mountains, saw overnight maximum recoveries only up to 35% or less, although most coastal and lower elevation areas saw much better recoveries. Heading into this new week, there is not going to be a whole lot of change to the hot and dry pattern. The area of high pressure we've been dealing with has been weakened slightly to start the week, thanks to a trough to our north which brought critical fire weather to the Pacific Northwest this weekend. But as we go through the week, the high will actually re-strengthen as it remains centered near the Great Basin and the Four Corners. This is going to keep the hot pattern going with very little overall change in the weather. Here's a look at today's forecast highs. In some areas, especially west of the coastal slopes, we will slightly take the edge off of the heat today, but it's still going to be quite hot, and interior areas will hardly see any change, with triple digits remaining common in the valleys and upper 80s and 90s even in the lower mountains. And the deserts remain well into the triple digits, with 110 to 120 in the low deserts. And as I mentioned, the air mass is quite dry and will remain that way for most of this week. Minimum humidity will remain mainly in the upper single digits and teens away from the coastal areas all this week. And we will continue to see sizable areas of fair to poor recoveries each night, especially across the interior and the foothills and mountains. By the second half of this week, a modest improvement in humidities is possible, especially in Southern California, as the monsoon finally tries to make a resurgence. Winds this week will remain on the light side as they've been throughout this hot pattern. Local and terrain flows will continue to dominate with some localized afternoon breeziness amidst a light onshore general flow regime. Just for good measure, here's a look at the forecast highs by the time we get to Friday, and we're not missing any big ups or downs in between here and there. It's going to be pretty much a steady state dosing of above average temperatures through the week, albeit safely below record high temperatures for this time of year. Like I mentioned, humidity will tend to tick up a little bit later in the week, and so while temperatures won't change much, heat stress will probably tend to increase later this week due to the added humidity and likely some warmer overnight temperatures as well. Our recent pattern has not been a favorable one for monsoon moisture due to the center of high pressure being too strong and too close to allow for good moisture transport into the region. The pattern this week is not going to be a whole lot better for it initially, but by later this week we will finally see the flow aloft become a little more favorable for the monsoon. That is going to bring shower and thunderstorm chances back into our forecast. Isolated showers and thunderstorms will likely return to the mountains and deserts of Southern California east and south of I-15 on Thursday or Friday and continue through the weekend. Activity may also spread into the Sierra by the weekend. Right now, this activity is looking pretty isolated and confined to the high mountains and deserts where storms tend to be pretty wet and slow-moving, but we will keep an eye out for any changes. As hot and dry weather continues, it's going to keep our fuel moistures very dry this week. Dead fuel moistures have fallen to anywhere from the 3rd to 10th percentile across most of our PSAs, and ERCs have risen to the 90th to 97th percentiles, and in some cases even above the 97th percentile. It's also safe to assume that the heat and especially the dryness are taking a toll on our live fuel moistures as well. Live fuels are going to be much more receptive to carrying fire until or unless we see some beneficial moisture. Given all this, we can say with confidence that background fire danger is very high across the region. Despite the very hot and dry conditions, fire activity has remained quite limited across the region. We're certainly benefiting from a lack of lightning, and sometimes these very hot patterns do tend to keep people inside and cut down on IA. Nonetheless, with several days of hot and dry weather behind us and at least several more still to come, there's no doubt that the fire environment is quite volatile at the moment, even though we haven't had the activity to match it. And with no change in the upcoming conditions, our fire potential is going to remain substantially elevated this week, above average for this already typically busy time of year. Any well-aligned starts will have potential for significant growth, especially in the afternoons. We'll also continue to keep an eye on the lightning potential later this week. Right now, it doesn't look like a big deal, but it's definitely worth watching given our very dry fuel conditions. That's it for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. The next one will be on Tuesday, August 4th.